Welcome everyone to another Helm to Tower video. This one's going to be a little different than what we're doing, and that's because I am joined here by Alex O'Neill.
Hello.
I am Mike Burgess. We are the Destiny freaks that are a part of this channel, more or less. If you don't know, we are a sister channel to Irrational Passions, which we're our main thing, which we cover video games at. But this is our Destiny focused channel. I know we've gone over that before, but usually we don't do videos where we're just kind of talking about stuff. And we're going to do that here.
This was my idea. I really wanted, I had the thought of like when I was doing Grandmasters, starting them this season of the Plunder for people listening in media res. And I was just thinking about, you know what would be fun? And I like coming up with ideas that might get clicks.
Get them clicks.
Very infrequently do we actually do a lot of those things, but I thought I messaged you about this, and I was like, I feel like this would do well and would be fun to do. And so we're gonna rank the strikes.
Yes, we're ranking the current set of strikes that are in Destiny 2. So we're not going to be going back to the previous strikes that have been sunset. We're just going to be doing, well, I guess now that I'm looking at this, Warden of Nothing is here. I know Warden of Nothing is in the game right now. Never mind.
Warden of Nothing is still in the game.
So we're doing all the current strikes that are in the video game Destiny 2 as of this season, as you said. And we're going to be taking everything into account here, like you kind of alluded to, of like, we're going to be saying, you know, how fun is this strike as a baseline, but also when we were doing them at higher difficulties in Nightfalls and Grandmaster Nightfalls, how do they feel that way too? And we're going to be taking all of that into account when ranking these, because we are seasoned Grandmaster conquerors in Destiny 2. I think I'm at Conqueror 4.
Yes,
and we'll be
I'm gilded
5.
once. Yeah.
Conqueror 5 probably by the end of the season. I definitely plan on doing those this season as well. And also they've all been changing over time, because like the game has changed. You know, 3.0s and stuff are here. So like some of these we haven't necessarily done with all the 3.0s together, but I think we can still give our experiences, because we have, at least I have done all of these in Grandmaster form, for sure.
Yeah.
And
there
then,
might be. I'm looking.
I was gonna say,
have I done all of these? Yes, I have. I have done all these.
Yeah, done all these. Well. Exodus, and
I've never finished Lightblade.
Yes, okay. Yep.
GM4.
That should give you an early peek of maybe where that strike is gonna go. But you know, it's so. I think we'll also just, you know, before we get right into ranking, I think we'll also use this as a way to like conversate about just like the current status of like playing strikes in Destiny 2 and that kind of loop that it's in right now, and maybe our feelings on what we want to see as, you know, if we get more strikes and updates to this game. Hopefully, you know, PvP has seen some love in recent seasons, maybe not as much as people would like, but I think
never enough. Yeah.
But I think also like strikes and that whole system could also use a similar touch. But we can get into that. But I think first we can just, you know, let's just rank these bad boys. I say we just can go. Maybe you can pick one and where you want to put it. We can talk about it, and then I'll pick, and we'll just alternate. How about we do that? Does that sound good?
That sounds good to me.
Cool. So I will give you first pick of Destiny 2 strikes. What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
I want to start with the Disgraced.
The Disgraced.
How do you feel about the Disgraced?
That's a good one to start with, because that is the one that is currently going this week that we've been playing, and I just did it, so it is pretty fresh.
We did it together as well.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I will say, it feels like a very strong middle of the pack strike to me.
Okay.
Just because I can feel that it's from Destiny 1, and they kind of tried to update it for Destiny 2 in some respects, but I think it's still just sort of fine. Like, I think there are some things that in it that are still a little annoying to me. Like, I think that the big number one thing is when you get, like, halfway into this strike and then the boss is just hanging out with you,
Yeah.
and they just kind of hang out with you until you shoot them a bunch, or people figure out that, like, hey, you can actually just run past her and shoot the stuff behind her, and that'll make her move away faster. And
Yeah.
like that can be a little annoying when I'm just playing it generally, right, and just when I'm just loading up the strike playlist to finish my weekly stuff, and I jump in the strike, and I just am the one person running ahead of running, just ignoring her completely, and watching my other teammates just try and fight her like she's an actual boss right now. And it's
Yeah.
like, all right, that's fine, but I want to get this done, so I'm just gonna run and start killing everything. So later, other than that, like minor grievance, I think like the rest of it's pretty fine. Like I think the opening is always, I actually really like when you're in that room with all the fallen, and there's just waves and waves of them, and it's like it feels good in that regards, because some of the older strikes that are like Destiny 2 Year 1 strikes can feel a little barren
Yeah. A little thin.
by today's standards. So I do
Yeah.
appreciate that room is just like that room, and then you go up the stairs into the next part, and it's just there's just enemies everywhere. And with Destiny's, with 3.0s, I feel like crowd control is a part of every class now, more or less, in some bombastic form that can be really fun. So just having those opportunities to just go all out with that stuff, I always appreciate a lot. And the
Yeah.
Strike has a couple spots. So I would personally say, for me, I would say B tier, but I would also like to hear what you think about the Disgraced.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking at this list. We have some amount, 15 strikes here.
Yeah, sounds
Didn't
about
even
right.
know there were 15 strikes in the game. That's crazy. It feels like both so much more and so much less.
Yep. Yeah. For
Anytime
sure.
you get corrupted 3 times in a row, you're like, why is this happening?
Yeah. What in the world? Come on.
Um,
Why am I on Nessus so much? Oh, because there's half the battlegrounds which aren't in this strike list are also on
Yeah.
Nessus. Yeesh.
Yeah. We're not going to bring those into this. We don't
Yeah.
talk about the battlegrounds. Battlegrounds
Yeah.
are fine.
Yeah, they're fine. They would be low on
They have
this
good,
list. It's fine.
good enemy density. It's fine. They're a little shorter, which I also appreciate.
Yeah.
There are like 2 strikes on this list that I think I hate, and
Okay,
the
great.
The Disgraced is one of them.
All right.
That's why I picked it first. I don't know if it's a hot take. I loved the Omnigul strike back in D1.
Okay.
And I remember the first time I played this strike, I was like, it's like this weird, like dream feeling of, I feel like I've been here before, but it's different and worse. Because in the Omnigul strike, obviously, infamously, you could kill Omnigul in that part in the hallway, and then the strike just ends.
Great.
Which is awesome. And I'm very bummed that they took that out of this. But it's just that final boss room, I think, is miserable because it takes too long. And this is on any difficulty.
Right.
Whether we're on the bare bones, just going through the playlist, or we're doing the GM, which this is like the last GM I needed to check off the list of having done all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's bad both times. It just takes too long. I feel like if you could, there are multi-phase boss fights in strikes that are shorter than the last room in this fight. And it really sucks the air out of the room for me. I think otherwise it's fine. Like you said, I do like the beginning. The middle part of just kind of traversing and then fighting the hive on that like one kind of plateau at the top of the Cosmodrome. I really like that as like a set piece that I think ultimately is just not as good as some of the other strike set pieces.
Yeah.
But the boss room is just a major bummer for me. I would probably put it like, for me, it would be like one of the 2. I would put it F tier probably. But
Okay.
in this instance, I would probably put it at C tier with what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm ultimately kind of indifferent on the strike. That's
Yeah,
more where I land. So like
and that's
honestly,
fair.
I'm kind of okay with it going in FT here.
Okay, let's throw an F tier,
F
maybe.
tier.
Get it in there.
First one in F tier. Get fucked, disgrace is what I'm gonna say.
Absolutely. Get fucked, disgrace.
All right. Well, there's our first one down. I guess I'll go ahead and pick one here as I
Yeah, hit me
run
with it,
through
Mike.
here. Let's see. Let's look at this list here. So I'll go the other end. I guess playing my cards already and say one that I think I like, but is I feel like is people just kind of, I guess just don't seem indifferent on it overall, or maybe don't like it because of a specific thing in this, and that is Word of Nothing. Word of Nothing is the strike that basically survived the. I guess actually corrupted here, so never mind. I was going to say it was the one that survived the Forsaken content vaulting. I mean, I'd still consider it in that because like I always considered it a Tangled Shore like strike because it was originally on that map and they just but even though like it was in an area that wasn't really involved in that zone per se.
Yeah.
But I was still kind of viewed it as that because it was so focused on the opening of Forsaken and that story and the characters that you talk to in that strike or are part of that strike are very much were reminiscent of that. But at the same time, I'm glad it was the one that stayed out of all of the ones that we lost in those vaultings because the other one was like Broodhold, which was kind of not really great.
Yeah, I was gonna say nobody wanted Brutal.
Yeah, Brutal was just kind of whatever. It was just like a very kind of boring hive strike I found.
Yeah.
And then the other one was and granted, it's one that I've wanted to erase from my memory so badly because of the GM experience. The season before it was vaulted.
Oh, Hallowed Lair.
Hallowed Lair. I was forgetting the name. Hallowed Lair. I actually liked up until we played it as a Grandmaster, and then now it is like one of my least favorite ones ever.
Yeah. That's what a mini Screeb will do to you.
Yeah, that's what a mini Screeb will do to you, and just realizing, oh yeah, this is content that was not designed with this kind of stuff in mind, and now it just feels fucking miserable. But Warden of Nothing, I think, is actually a really fun strike. I just like the pace of it, where you kind of are like rushing this prison, and I like that it plays more into like I feel like there are some strikes that tie in like that. When you kind of get the story of them while you're playing, right? They do a little bit of like this is clearly post the campaign you played through, but they usually are a little vague about it sometimes. Like that's kind of how I feel about like some of the other ones in here, where like they story wise they take place after the story, but they don't really talk about what happened during that campaign. But they do that in Warden, and I like that. Because there's a lot of like opening lines where you come in and like the drifters like talking smack to you and just you kind of get that was kind of the first taste of Drifter being in the game. So I always really appreciated actually hearing him like in the story and talking about like, hey, if you ever need somebody to help you, if I ever need somebody, I'm gonna call you up. Like I always like his lines and all of it. And I know like I think like, there's some people who very much do not like the train segments. In Warden of Nothing, where you're kind of dodging and weaving the train, but I actually always really liked that. That those parts, just because it felt different, and it makes that whole strike as a whole feel like a bigger zone. I like that even though like the I wish there were in some parts of the strike there's a little bit more enemies, especially in some of those train zones. I wish there was a little bit more combat. I will say I like that. There's a variety of enemies throughout the strike. Like you're fighting, you go into that train section and you're fighting Cabal, but then there's also like Vex walking around, and then once you get through that zone, you get into like a big fight with a Vex enemy, and then you like kind of escape out into an outside area of that, and then you have like a big fight with Cabal, and then like I like that it's like you don't get too many often moments where you see like two sides battling each other, and that's like the entirety of that strike. As you see Vex and Cabal just kind of let loose in this prison riot that happened in Forsaken, and you're seeing kind of the aftermath of that, of them like kind of fighting for control of this. And I also think
Yeah.
as a GM, it's like Grandmaster Nightfall in particular, like I really like the split of like there are some really challenging sequences in that, like particular that Cabal fight where you got to like dismantle the mines and like fight other enemies. Like there's like a real cool, part can be very chaotic, but also like in a fun and challenging way. But I also just
Yeah.
like a lot of these sequences that are changed up by the difficulty tier of Grandmasters in this one. So I wouldn't necessarily say this is S tier, but I will say it's A tier. But what do you think of Warden?
Yeah, I like Warden a lot. It's one of few strikes with all three types of champions in it, which I don't know, depending on who you are listening, could be a pro, could be a con. you know,
Yep.
there's only one Overload Minotaur at the very beginning. To be clear, it's not like there's actually a lot of Overload champions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Warden. Once I saw like years ago at this point, like one person doing the trick where you jump up on the rail for
Yep.
the train and run across it in like the middle part. I was like,
You
oh,
never go back.
yeah, my mind is blown. It's so much easier. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I like you. I do wish there was more fighting in it. And like all the boss rooms like have like 6 enemies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the boss, which is fine. Like it doesn't need it. This is a way more kinetic strike, right? There's a lot more movement, which there are few strikes like that. It's the only strike with like in the heart of it a big sparrow section.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's really
I
cool.
like it. It's somewhere in the A to B tier. So yeah, if you're feeling A, I'm feeling A.
Cool. Throwing it up there. Boom. Word of nothing. A tier. All right. What is the next strike you got, Alex? I know.
I'm trying to debate if I should do the other one that I said I hate, or if I should save that for later. I think I'm gonna save that for later. Let's talk about Fallen Saber.
Fallen Saber, another returning Destiny 1 strike.
Yes, this is one of my favorite strikes, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a great Nightfall to grind. I've spent most of the time, if I'm like looking for Nightfall to grind, either reputation or drops or exotics or prisms or whatever I need. I really like Fallen Saber just because you can do that on hero, and I think it's just breezy. Obviously, some people I think probably have umbrage with the beginning part of protecting the war sat. I like it. Pretty chill, pretty good amount of enemies, easy to handle. There's a great cheese for it in GMs, which is great. And I like the GM of this. I think it is very tough. Having now done it with like Arcburn for the first time, because the last time I did it was pre-elemental burns in GMs, but I still really like it there. I just think it's like a good strike, similar to Devil Slayer, which we'll talk about later. It's just like it's a good all-arounder, right? It's got a little bit of everything as far as like interesting environments to traverse, a tense boss room to have, good combat scenarios. You know, it's less on the like movement and going a lot of different places, but you know, it even has like a little bit of the puzzle room with the electric field in the middle, which is not great, to be fair, right?
Yeah.
Obviously on higher difficulties, getting nuked by that electric spark sucks. Never not sucks. But there's just like a charm to Fallen Saber that I really like. How do you feel about it?
I'm in somewhat a similar camp. Like I think there was a point where I was not the biggest fan of it, and I think that came from there was like a season in particular where it was a GM, and this was the pre 3.0 subclass era. Like this was even like when anarchy was still a viable weapon, because I very much remember frantic like us, you know, doing a GM and like having to frantically get up and hopefully not get randomly sniped by invisible guys, and like you know, plant a bunch of anarchy where the enemies drop, and then running back into hiding constantly, because you know, just because how different Nightfalls and Grandmasters in particular were at a certain point. Where
Yeah.
now I feel like if we did it now, I feel like it would definitely, like you said, it would be pretty breezier.
Yeah.
With like the level and power we've kind of jumped up to.
Yeah. Arc
Um,
grenades make this a much
yeah,
easier
yeah,
strike.
for sure. And yeah, and like it can be fun. Like yeah, it is. I feel like on lower difficulties or just like like in all, I guess just the standard strike when you're doing the
Mhm.
playlist, it's totally, it's like you said, it's totally fine. Especially that opening bit, like, is kind of just nothing because you can, because literally it's literally just feels like you're just like spawn killing waves
Yep.
of enemies as they come in, and they like can't really do anything about it. So it's just kind of like, all right, well, let's just do this, I guess. So like that's fine. I think at the end of the day though, like I appreciate it just because I always like the Rasputin tech stuff from
Mhm.
Destiny, and like that's definitely like some of the stuff that's been like vaulted in content. That's like some of the stuff I missed the most, is like those areas and just being able to go to them. So
Yep.
this was cool to be able to like see this like underground Rasputin bunker, like at least is back in some form in this game and through this strike. So I appreciate it from that level. Sorry, what rank were you feeling on it?
I probably put this at like a B. This is like a
B.
solid
Yeah, B. I'm with B.
middle of the pack,
Middle of the
good
pack.
strike.
Good strike, middle of the pack. Yeah, I feel that. Let's see. And now I'll pick a next one here.
Yeah, what you got?
Let's see. Now I'm gonna get spicy with this one.
Please.
I actually really like the Glassway.
All right.
I think this is because I think this is one that got mirrored in like when this was like I remember when this first became a GM, it was extremely difficult.
Yes.
Um, I think it's become more as people have just learned the enemy waves and learned the and also now that we have 3.0 stuff, it has become much more manageable and almost
Yeah.
and some could say to an extent where it's enjoyable. That's me because
Yeah. Yeah, true.
I just think I just like again I like the more tech sci-fi aesthetics of all of that stuff. So having this like crazy like fully underground Vex constructs like frozen in ice was like always a really cool visual that I really liked for Europa in general, and like just going into this like big Vex going. I think people don't appreciate enough when you like first enter the strike. Not because now it's become so norm that you just like sprint through the icy area, but like first going into that big construct and then looking across this giant chasm and this like Vex waterfall. Like I always thought that was just like such a cool visual that I
Yeah.
think people don't appreciate enough now. Because again, this is like this is a year plus old strike now, so people just kind of sprint through it and do whatever. I appreciate that, like that we see stasis enemies, like a unique type of enemies with those fallen that have stasis powers right at the get-go. I feel like those were an enemy type that they should have used more in other stuff that they just kind of didn't.
Yep.
I feel like a similar way about like right now with like the Hive Guardians. Like I understand that like I guess it makes sense for them in world or context or whatever to be specifically a part of tied to that place because that's where they're from. But I think like at a certain point it's like why the hell not just like throw these in different things, just mix it for the sake of mixing it up.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm feeling in terms of strikes in general. But we'll get to that more of that convo later. But
Hmm.
I just think it's a really fun aesthetically pleasing strike to just like play through. I actually really think I would say like the part where you have to like hold the plate to like uh, bring down the milk is not maybe the most exciting. Maybe it's way more tense when you're on like Grandmaster and you have to like peek and dodge sniper fire, and that can be interesting. But I think
Yeah.
once it's fully depleted and you're running through it and like fighting enemies from kind of plate to plate, I always really liked that because it's like you're kind of jumping around and like you can kind of divide and conquer, so to speak, and like people can go one each kind of like those lanes more or less and kind of go down them and fight enemies, and I always find those encounters in that area very fun. But yeah, I think the bosses. I think the boss is interesting because you have the two different hydras, the big one and the small one. So kind of having to manage that, I thought was always interesting. Even though like, once one put on GM, it was very challenging. I think the challenge more so was that like it was managing the bosses, but also that there are so many champion enemies.
Yes.
That spawn in that boss room, which I can definitely agree that maybe it's a little too many. But I think again now we're in the current state of the game where there's so many 3.0 classes and we're so much more powerful, it has become much more manageable. And I think in a fun way that like really hits that point in Destiny that I really like when you really have to coordinate with a group and communicate and be prepared for these sequences where it's like, all right, this wave of enemies are spawning, we need to like huddle up in this walkway and let them funnel us to us, and you're gonna pop your super here, and that lets you do this, and like that lets your teammates do that. And like I really like when we're able to pop off in that coordination, and like that really only happens like occasionally in dungeons, and more so in raids. So like I feel like this is one of the few GMs at a point where you really need to coordinate in that way, and I always really like when they can hit those moments in Destiny. So I actually have, it was this one of those strikes that I definitely did not like at first, but then have come around on more and more, the point where I would put it in A tier. But I would like to hear what you have to say about the Glassway.
You bring up a lot of good points. I like the Glassway. I'm not one of those haters.
Okay, good to hear.
The Glassway. And the boss room, kind of to your point, like there's an element of GMs that I really like as someone who plays challenging video games because I enjoy them, like Dark Souls or etc. Spelunky, what have you. In Glassway, similar to Scarlet Keep, there is kind of like a rhythm to the final boss that you have to learn of like, okay, when we get the Hydra to half health, it's going to spawn the next wave.
Yeah,
we got to know that that's coming. And I like that stuff. I like knowing exactly the spawns and when they're going to happen and what's going to come out, right? Like, okay, is it overloads that spawn at the halfway point? No, it's the barriers that spawn and then this, and then knowing kind of what you're going to go up against next. Yeah, I would put Glassway at A. In the absence of the Pyramidion, we need like a cool Vex strike.
100%.
And
that's a good point as well.
Scratches that itch. And you've got the layer of like, it's obviously very important to the narrative of Europa as a whole. Like the Glassway, as its existence, changed the course of like the story of Europa and the Exo Lab and all that.
Yeah.
To give it a little spice on top, and yeah, like you get the stasis enemies. It's one of the few strikes with two enemy types, right? Which there are not that many of. And I always like those. So yeah, Fighting Fallen all the way through, and then House of Salvation Fallen, which there are not that many of, and then Vex at the end is a cool mix up. But boy, those wyverns will absolutely ruin
Wyverns are brutal. But sweet, yeah, and I agree that that was a good point to bring up. Of like, it's important to the narrative, but also there is not. You bringing up the Pyramidion unlocked that like nostalgia memory of like, oh yeah,
that's a strike.
That was such a good strike.
That's an S tier. That's absolutely.
Yeah, this is our Destiny 2 strike tier list brought to you by the Pyramidion.
The Pyramidion, yeah, as presented by.
All right, what strike are you going for next?
I'm gonna bring in, and this is when we can get to this hot takes territory. Okay, one of my, if not my favorite strike in the game.
Hear it.
Birthplace of the Vile.
Okay, yeah.
I am a huge fan of this strike. Because the music's very good. If you haven't pulled up the boss music for Birthplace of the Vile recently, go ahead and pull that track up. That's a beautiful track right there. It will get. I have never gotten like murder mode ready to go, Destiny style, except for that track. And the Lightblade final boss. They're just bangers, very good. They get you pumped up. Um, I love the pacing of this strike. I love the location of this strike. And I love the boss fight in this strike. And I love it through to the GM level as well, which I was really worried that this was going to be a completely unmanageable, impossible GM. And it's absolutely not, but similar to Glassway, you do need to be like on top of it. There are certain points where the next wave of ads are going to spawn, and you have to be like, all right, it's time to clear crowd control. All right, back to the boss, crowd control, back to the boss. And then the warp happens, and you kind of get a minute to breathe. And you go through the different areas. But yeah, like every part of this strike I think is great. I love the plate bit at the beginning. I love just walking through the city and all the teleports. I love the in between rooms. I love the double plate bit in the middle. The bridge is great, and it's like tons of enemies, super fun to fight through on any difficulty. And I love the boss fight. I think like the way that boss fight turns into such like a crowd control, stay on your toes, keep the pressure on kind of fight is really different than most GM and regular strike bosses. Obviously, you're just going to burn through it before half the ads spawn on normal difficulty. But like when you're going through it and the boss has like a ton of health and you have to clear every single ad as you're going through, and that music's pumping and then you get warped and then it's just on to the next thing. I just feel like it has so much momentum and pulse. And it's a lot of fun from the lowest difficulty to the highest. I really think so.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like I like this strike a lot too. I
Way
think like,
better than Hallowed Lair.
I like. Yeah, I was gonna say in terms of like it being the new Scorn focused strike. That is for sure. It was way leagues better than that one was. I think just the overall what I like about it is like you pretty much like summed up was like there's like a pace to this strike that just works, and it's really nice. Like you have these moments like I like the like you hit that moment where you enter the cave and then you have like a big wave of enemies, but then you have like these smaller moments where you're going into these like creepy mysterious tunnels that are all like the darkness pyramid structures. And then you hit that plate sequence. Then you have like another sequence where you kind of have these like ups and there's a lot of good like ups and downs moments to the strike that I really like. And like you said, like once you get into those higher nightfall levels of that boss room becomes way much more of an interesting fight, and like having to kind of play that like a sort of ring around the rosy, to so to speak, where it's like, okay, the boss is here, so we need to move over here, but also enemies might be here, and we just need to nuke them as soon as they come up. And like it's more about focusing, doing crowd control rather than necessarily fighting the boss right away, and that can be. And there is like a pace to it in that at that tier as well. That's a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm generally with you. I think it's definitely. I definitely will say to play my cards too much, but out of the strikes from the most recent expansion, I would say is my favorite one. That's for sure.
I like the other one as well, but this is definitely my favorite of the two.
Cool. Where'd you want to rank it?
I put this in S tier, baby.
Okay. I have no complaints. Let's do it.
Hell yeah.
S tier. All right.
I feel like people sleep on that strike too. People just never talk about it, and it's really one of my favorite like activities in the game.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things that in general when it comes to strikes, right? Like there's just I feel like there's just so many strikes in that playlist. Yeah. Which is not necessarily, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing because of how much you have to kind of play it every so often. But at the same time, it's like, it gets buried in, here's these, we're literally looking at 3 Nessus strikes here on this thing. And then you add in Battlegrounds, which then Battlegrounds adds like another 2 more things to that. And then you add, I was even wrong. There's 4 Nessus strikes on this list. Or no, there's 4 Nessus strikes. And then there's 2 more Battlegrounds that are also on Nessus. And then there's the other 2 are not, I believe. So like and like and on top of that, there's just a lot of these have been in the game for many years, and this one's relatively new. So I think it just gets lost in the general consensus of the where the current status of like strikes and the Vanguard stuff is in Destiny, where it's just kind of a lot of stuff we've done a lot of.
Yeah.
But I agree with you though. Like I think it deserves a little more attention because it is such a well made strike and thing to like play in Destiny. Another one I'm gonna go for, and I don't know, maybe this is spicy, or maybe it's not that spicy, because I also think this is an S tier strike, and that is Lake of Shadows, baby.
Oh wow!
Lake of Shadows
S-tier.
is an S tier strike, and I think that's multiple factors. One, like you said, it is one that is fun to just farm. Obviously, it was pretty notorious for a while as being like the easiest strike in the video game. I think that has some competitors now just because of how the game has evolved, and some of all these older strikes from year one of Destiny 2 are like, I think are kind of easy now, in some respects. But I think this one stands that just because of, I think there also is a very interesting narrative this strike has always had, where it is that constant battle of it was perceived as this, and then Bungie as devs tried to fix it, and then people immediately found a way around it in a way that was always like extremely entertaining to me. That like added like an extra like level of story that this like strike has like ascended a little bit more higher to me than these other strikes of having its own ongoing narrative and like sort of, I guess you could say, meme-ish factor to it that I appreciated a lot. And I also just think like, even though it is the EDZ, which is like, again, like a very, that has been around since Destiny 2, that area and that zone, I still think it's like a cool area to explore in that, which, because you don't really get a lot of that, where it's like you go through these like ruined like sewers and you're like fighting Taken, and it's all been like overgrown with all this crazy Taken stuff, and like we don't see a lot of like Taken on Earth in particular. Maybe that was more of a thing in Destiny 1, but I always thought that was cool to like see them like in like not like a super duper fantastical place where would you normally see them, right?
Yeah.
And I just like that aspect of it. And I also, like, not so I think this was more of a norm in the earlier strikes, where you start off in a zone that is like actually like filled with other people, and I thought that was always kind of neatish to a certain extent. I kind of, although I will say, like, I think at this point I'm kind of okay with them like not doing that, because I think that was a lot of the reasons we saw a lot of the other strikes ultimately leave the game. Because they were so intrinsically tied to being in the destination itself, so to speak. But yeah, I just think this one in a similar way is like, even though it is super easy, I really like the pace of it, and like the moments in it where you like have this opening sequence where you're basically like running through these streets and breaking these big Taken bubbles and like kind of weaving through snipers. I always thought that was a fun sequence. But then, when you get kind of in these later kind of like, tight corridors, and you're kind of having to like fend off waves of enemies, I think it was always really fun. And I appreciated that, like, even though it was a year one strike, there was actually like a decent amount of enemies to fight, and different ways to fight them. Like, I specifically think of like that long bridge moment that is like actually can be potentially like treacherous area in higher tier difficulties and nightfalls and stuff, is having these like the phalanx shields who are right up in you, and you have to be prepared for them, but also there's snipers you have to be prepared for too. And I always remember, even in moments when that strike is super easy to farm, because all you really needed to do is, as long as you just made it to the boss, you could just melt the boss pretty much instantly. Like, that boss is like such a joke, and I always find it like super hilarious when people don't realize that boss actually does have like different phases and like actual abilities that he can do, but because you can melt him so instantaneously, like, people don't even realize like, oh, he has this whole mechanic where he makes like Taken lava, the Taken like goo, like come out of the ground as you do more damage to him. and he like intentionally like tethers you to him to like pull you in if you were like trying to get to a safe spot, like and get off the floor, like a floor's lava moment. He has a tether thing that he can tether the person and pull him towards him to like pull him into the lava and stuff. But like people don't even like know that exists, because
Yeah.
you can just melt him instantly. But also at the end of the day, like Destiny has become more and more of an MMO like game, and I think that stuff is kind of needed. Like we see that now even with like raids and dungeons, making them like weekly things you can farm and repeat and do over and over. Like I think that I think it's okay to have some of that stuff in the game where like people just find ways to farm and want to play a bunch during these periods because they like being able to do this stuff. And I think they realize that to an extent, but also like I know they've tried to change the strike a little bit, but I think the last time it was up for rotation, it was still one of the easiest ones in the roster. So I just think there's like a fun like Destiny community story to this strike, but I also think like it still is just a fun strike even by like today's standards. So I think all of that combined makes it like a top tier strike to me personally.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
I remember our mutual Destiny friend Jake was of 6-1 Indie. Folks, check them out. He was like looking at triumphs, and the one for Lake of Shadows is like when it's the nightfall, destroy all of Grask's taken blights. He's like, I didn't even know the boss spawned blights in there.
Yep.
Which is very case in point to what you're saying. Yeah, I like Lake of Shadows. As I keep in mind, this is coming from someone who just ran this strike about 60 times to get candy. A lot of candy. So I do have like a recency negative bias of it.
That's more self-afflicting than anything. Though.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
So like I wouldn't.
I've run Lake of Shadows many times, just in general as like a GM.
Yeah, for sure.
Grinded out, just most recently, I got a lot of candy from there. Yeah, I like it. I like a strike that if you have a person on your team that randomly spawned in that has eager edge, can finish it in 2 minutes and 33 seconds.
Yep. People just there's definitely times when you'll get into this strike and people will just
be at the boss right when you spawn in. You're like,
more or less, and you're just walking through an entirely empty strike because people just can blaze through it. It's a little insane in that regard.
Yeah, I like it. I was feeling more in A tier for Lake because of the grindability, the friendliness, but there's nothing like exceptional about it for me. Like if it had like one thing, I like what you're saying about like the location. Going across that like broken dam is always like a really cool part.
Yeah.
That you don't see in other strikes, and like having like the boss, the mini boss spawn at the other end of the dam. And then having a bunch of those goddamn vandals throwing up the shields, the bubbles, and it's like, oh god, just stop! I just put Gallahorn this guy.
Yeah.
And in GMs, the taken unstoppable phalanxes just be one-stop kings of just absolutely ruining your whole day coming out of that hallway, going out onto the dam.
Yeah.
I think there is something special about Lake of Shadows. I'm willing to give it to the S. This is certainly like the farming GM and strike in general.
Yeah.
So like when it comes up, it's like, all right, time to grind. If GMs are open, like let's get some ascendant charts, get ready for next season, whatever we need to do. Get palindrome back in the day. So like as someone who has grinded it so much, I do have like an affectionate relationship with Lake of Shadows for sure.
Awesome. I'm putting it S tier.
S baby.
Grind
that strike. Get out
grind there. Get in there. Yeah, it's like that's another good point you said. Like it's definitely one of the strikes that like if you are any way curious of like getting into like a grandmaster level difficulty in Destiny and seeing what that is exactly about. Like granted, it's definitely a grind, so I understand why people may not necessarily be in for it. But if you're willing to do that and like want to give it a shot and try, like if this is one of the strikes that season, like it's definitely the one to do and try as your first one. I think it's the great first strike.
Yeah, there's only one other one that was ended up being my first GM that I would probably recommend
Yeah.
as a first GM as well, that
Hmm.
we'll get to later. All right, let's see here. Let's rip the band-aid off because I really want to know what you think of it. Let's talk about Lightblade.
Okay.
Lightblade is, I think, one of the best strikes in the game. It is hurt by how brutal it is that I'm sure we can talk about. Like, I've never, and it is like I think it's the hardest GM in the game. People have agreed that Lightblade is, um, for many factors. A, arc burn. It was like the first time it came up as a GM when Witch Queen launched was when Burns came to GMs and they took out like the unique Grandmaster Knight modifiers, which I really liked. I don't know what Lightblades would have been. Like maybe like Hive Guardians respawn twice as fast or something terrible like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
um,
sure.
I'm sure they had like some sticky notes of some ideas to do with it, but instead, 50% more arc damage. Fuck it, I guess, or 75% more arc damage. Um, yeah, it's got really cool vistas and venues. Like the boat sequence is awesome. The swamp sequence is terrible. I don't think it's like atrocious on normal difficulty, but it's not anytime like your movement is constrained in Destiny, it is you are forcing the player into an uncomfortable position. I think,
Hmm.
and more other players probably take more umbrage with it than I do, but I certainly don't like it. And just the Lucian moths that explode with arc explosion that do a billion damage on Grandmaster difficulty. The Void Titan, Hive Titans that will throw suppression grenades like from downtown that will absolutely one shot you out of fucking
Yep.
nowhere,
Just instant vaporize. Yep.
instant vaporize. And like on lower difficulties they suppress you, so like they'll just rip you out of your super or whatever the hell you're doing. So it's like not good on either end of the spectrum, and they just
Yeah.
throw those things like nonstop. But as someone who's never beaten the Lightblade GM, maybe this season we'll find out soon enough.
Yep.
uh we're in a post Storm Chaser world, post Volt Shot world, so maybe it'll be different this time. But I there is a part of me that really appreciates the brutality of it. Obviously, uh, Darkblade is one of my favorite strikes from Destiny 1 also, and this is like a big loving homage to that, bringing is it Alakul, I think is his name,
Yeah.
back and making him basically the most badass guardian hive that there is or ever will be. um, I like those aspects to it. I don't think it's perfect. It's not an S tier strike for me, but it's a really special strike, and visually alone, like the Temple of Oryx and all these different places that you get to go in the throne world are worth it for sure. I would probably put it like in the B tier ultimately, because it is like it's not like Birthplace of the Vile where it like threads it perfectly, right? Where it's like this is tough but fun, and it's fun on lower difficulties, and it's it gets all the right points. There's no like swamp part of Birthplace of the Vile where
Right.
there is this long swamp part of Lightblade that is rough. But overall, I do think it's great. The music's great. God, that boss music is so good. It's just like with Arcburn, that boss's like turret shot is just it's too much.
Yeah.
It feels bad when you're playing it on a Grandmaster level and you just get two tapped from across the
Yeah.
map.
You just get tapped and like you can't even, and it feels like such an like thing you can't control
Yeah.
because of how weird the arcs and the spread of that shot is. Yeah, I was gonna say, there is definitely a level of like the difficulty factor makes this a frustrating and annoying Grandmaster. Definitely in the vein of like it is probably still one of the hardest ones in the game for multiple reasons. But actually, yeah, I don't like this strike as much as you do.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say I outright hate it, but I think for me, I feel somewhat at the opposite ways in a little bit. That like the part I actually don't like about this strike is the boat ride. I think the
Really?
boat,
Okay.
I think the boat, like again, you're right. Like I think the visual of all of this looks great. Like obviously it's this Savathun throne world. Like all that stuff looks incredible, and I always really liked that. And I think the first few times you do this strike, when that Witch Queen was hot and fresh, and like getting that little spectacle of like wow, this cool like scenic view, and like you're having this like kind of throwaway, but now we've ran it a bunch. It's a few months later, and I just kind of find this part boring.
Sure.
It's just kind of like, all right, I'm on this boat, and I think I've had more fun with that sequence when some of the strategies we were trying to figure out for the Nightfall were to like actually get off of the boat and like jump from the sides of the bridges. And fight the witches, and like I found that way more fun than ever. Just like when you're just kind of sitting on that boat and just kind of like, all right, I'm just gonna plink at this witch, and there's a thing here. Okay, now Thrall, I guess here's some Thrall, I guess, whatever. And then I don't know, like that has worn out its welcome to me, and that allure of this like cool like scenic view that you're kind of like just stuck on for a little while, just kind of overstayed its welcome for me. But the rest of the strike I actually like enjoy. Like I actually kind of like the tension that is the swamp area, because granted I think that's better done when you're like on higher tiers and you're actually playing with a coordinated group. When you're just kind of in a random strike with people, and people are just like not gonna clearly like have run this a couple times or don't know, and they're just like not giving an F about standing at the things, and are just trying to move as quickly as they can, and that just quickly turns into everybody spread out, and either you're the person that's way ahead or you're the person that's way behind, and you're just gonna kind of meander until someone makes it basically to that end thing, and then you're just like, okay, that's done now. I'll just run over here. That's fine. It's like it's weird. I think it's weird. It feels really weird on those like normal difficulties. For people, like I've definitely had those weird moments where it's just kind of lame when you're stuck around. But I think like once you kind of get past that, I will say like the opening sequence when you're in the garden and you're kind of like storming that court of orcs kind of gate, and then the fight inside with the guardians, I think are really fun engagements. Because obviously that has the Hive Guardians, and I like the big open area that is that like garden area that's in the front. Even though more times than not, you don't really spend a lot of time there. I still think it's like a cool area, and it's like, and I think it's like you can have some fun fights in that zone. But then after you get past the boat and the whatchamacallit, the swamp. When you get that little quick bit with Scorn battle, I kind of wish there was a little bit more of that going on. Like I kind of wished like when you're in that first court area, there were some like Scorn also. I guess there are some in there now that I think about it. But I wish there was like
not a lot though.
Yeah, I wish there was a little bit more of like the like Scorn Hive conflict on that strike in particular. 'Cause you just get that really small moment that I actually think is really cool. Like when you right before the boss battle where you have like a bunch of Hive ogres and like Scorn enemies like running at each other, and they're just kind of fighting it out, and you can just kind of sort of play third wheel and kind of shoot and blink at enemies, or kind of let the battle kind of figure itself out, which I think is always cool. And then Alakul, I think like I really hope I'm curious to see how it feels this season, like you said, with a lot of the updates. And like the last time it was available, we only had Void 3.0. We did not have Solar or Arc 3.0, so it could be a very different feeling going in here now for sure this season with all of our like new tools and builds and things and whatnot. So I am curious to see that. But yeah, the first time it was available, like that, like there were just aspects of that Alakul fight that just felt more unfair than challenging, just because of how the boss could react and how the boss could have these weird arcing shots, and the splash damage on them felt like completely unfair when you to the point where it's just like there were times when you just do that. When I actually cleared it, I felt like I really wasn't even fighting the whole time. I was just running. Because you were the one that just unfortunately got targeted, and it really just became more about surviving. So you just kind of were running instead of really actually engaging in a fight. and that was just annoying. And then it just kind of turned into like, all right, this person's got the aggro, so they're just gonna run and panic and hopefully stay alive and won't have some weird splash damage BS or whatever, some weird arc shot, or he just so happened to, catch you off guard, or just, these very inopportune things that could happen, and you were just kind of like, it felt more like it just was unfair rather than an engaging challenge. And then, but once we got it down, like, I feel like it was doable. We got it done, but I just definitely did not feel like accomplished by the end of it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping with maybe this update, maybe it'll be a little better. We'll have to wait. I'll have to wait and see. We'll see whenever we get to that point. But yeah, I don't hate this strike, but I think it's not as strong for me personally. So, what did you say? B tier?
I said B tier. We could put it in C.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna throw it in C.
Okay.
Cool. Let's see. What's the next one we can do here? I guess we can start getting rid of all these freaking Nessus strikes.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, like Nessus in general is weird because I feel like again it becomes that thing like we already mentioned, like there's only 4 strikes here and then there's more battlegrounds.
2 battlegrounds, yeah.
Yeah, there's more battlegrounds. So like this is literally like nearly half of this playlist is Nessus themed. And like, so like in one vein, I'm like sick and tired of seeing it, even though it is like such a cool looking visually destination that has existed in Destiny 2. But it's just that thing where like these are literally every one besides Proving Grounds, all of the 3 others have literally been in this game since 2017.
Yeah.
So it's just they've just been here forever, and I played them so much.
And I'm over it.
And I'm just kind of over it. In that regard,
totally.
So that's kind of where my feeling on it is. So I'm going to start with Insight Terminus.
Cool. Insight Terminus.
Insight Terminus is the one where you like basically are going underground and you fight Cabal and Vex. So that's just so people are like, because again, this is also one of those problems where it's like these all can fucking just blend together because there's so many of them.
Especially the ones on Nessus.
yes, for sure. So this is the one where you kind of like start and you like go down a hill and then you like go in this underground zone and you like find a bunch of Vex, and then as you go you like start seeing this like Vex and Cabal conflict, and like the Cabal are there to like steal this like Vex tech or whatever. And then it culminates in this like kind of this battle where you're fighting this big Scion, and there's the 3 plates you all have to stand on at a certain point in the encounter.
It's worth noting this was a PlayStation exclusive strike when Destiny launched.
Was it? I thought that was Lake of Shadows. This one was also?
I think it was both of them.
Oh, wow.
I know Inside Terminus was one of them. I don't know about Lake of Shadows, but yeah, Inside Terminus was.
Gotcha. Okay.
Not that makes any difference. This is like a totally whatever strike.
Yes, that's my ultimate goal. Was just
don't
like
give a shit about it.
Yes. I think there's the encounter where you have to like take the orbs across the pool and dunk them to like open up the big door. I think that encounter is fun, and I think it's
sure.
I think it can be, and I think it's like pretty tense on Grandmaster in particular when you have to like. That is one you have to be a little bit more prepared of. Like, I remember, granted this was in a world before 3.0s it's mostly where I was remembering this, where that one felt like one you had to be way more prepared of. Like, all right, the enemies are going to be spawning out of this this doorway or this doorway, and we have to be set up to either immediately nuke this doorway of enemies, or if they're coming from there, we need to like reposition and get out of here. So I liked that aspect, but granted now I'm pretty sure we did this one. I think this one was up last season, and that we had Solar 3.0, and that just kind of
just trashed,
and that just kind of trashed all over the 3.0 power set. Just kind of trashed over this strike for sure. The boss battle's kind of whatever. Also, like
totally.
I think I like that. Like again, it still has a decent enemy density to that fight, but also you're just kind of defending plates. So it's like whatever. All right.
little life hack for folks playing out there that don't like run GMs or anything. Like, if this is the Nightfall that week, it's really easy to get 100k on hero because enemies will spawn forever
Yep.
out of the gate while you're fighting the boss.
Mm-hmm.
So I've definitely farmed this for the pinnacle.
Yep. Yeah.
For sure, with randos that are also doing the same thing.
Definitely one you can do that on for sure. Glassway as well is one you can do that on.
Yeah, true. So many enemies in Glassway. This is like not an offense. This is not an F tier to me. I just don't give a shit about it. Right?
Yep.
Like, this is
That's kind of where I'm at too.
Tier, like, don't care. It's not like Lightblade where it's like rough, but I want it to be good. It's like, I don't care if this one comes up. I'm just trying to get through it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly. It is that permanent. It is that current state of Nessus that we've been talking about. Of just like, it's. I've seen this so many times. My eyes just immediately glaze over as soon as I see it. More or less, let's just get this over with.
Yep.
I'm putting this in C tier.
I was going to say also real quick with the Lightblade, I definitely really fell in love with that when I was doing Guardian Games grinding and the scored Nightfalls were up. That was really fun.
Yeah, that was something I was going to bring up once we kind of were almost wrapping up. When I wanted to talk about like the future, quote unquote, of strikes of stuff. I really liked the scoring stuff, and I hope they bring that back.
Yes.
But yeah, what strike you're going to go for next?
This is the other one that I hate.
Okay, let's hear it.
Exodus Crash.
Exodus Crash. Okay, let's hear it.
I mean, there's no part about this strike that I actually like.
Yeah.
Going through the beams, I hate it. It's like fine, but I don't like it. And it's like either it's already done when I'm doing the strike with randos, or no one is doing it, so I have to go do the beams. The middle room where you're protecting Ghost on the thing, cool. That's the only good part of this strike.
Yeah,
it's fine.
It's fine enough.
Two big servitors spawn at the end. You blow them up. It's cool. It's fine. I was worried that would end up being really bad on GMs. Turns out you just go back, hang out on the stairs, and it's fine.
Yeah, I think this is again another one that like you can tell there was a little bit of like GMs were a little bit designed around what the power set was at before 3.0s. Because this one was a little bit more like, particularly that sequence you're talking about, and the boss room in particular were way more intense post 3.0 era. But now on 3.0s, it's become like a nothing burger.
Yeah, and then the part after that, guess what? More beams. Also sucks.
Terrible.
And then on GMs, there's like 3 vandals that will one shot you all over the place. And I remember when we ran this, like, I just kept dying in the back, like, sorry, kill the bosses, please, so the enemies will despawn and I can get back to life now. And then the boss room is awful. It's probably like, it might be one top tier worst boss room in a strike. It's like Hollowed Lair, and this one, like, the floor is lightning, the boss is invisible, things are running up to you. There was like a strat where we used swords at one point just because the boss gets like up close to you. That's never good. That is never good.
It's just panic drop a well on the boss because he just runs around. Yep.
There was like one spot behind a box that we hid behind at one point because like that was the only reasonable place to not immediately die, and the floor wasn't lava there, and it sucked. It's all bad. I hate the boss room in this strike so much. I am like looking forward to doing it post 3.0s just because I want to destroy it.
Yep.
I really don't like Exodus Crash. It's funny because like I generally am fine with most of the other Nessus strikes. Like, you know, we'll get to them, but like I just do not like Exodus Crash. It is the oldest feeling strike in the game, for sure. It's the only strike with Cade 6, Nathan Fillion dialogue in it, which makes no sense. No one explains it at all.
No one explains it all. Yep.
And I know people don't like failsafe. I like failsafe. I don't like failsafe in this strike because I've done it so many times. I've been doing it since 2017. I'm more than over it. We don't have to sunset Nessus, but we do have to sunset Exodus Crash.
I'm with you. Like, there are some of the combat sequences I think that are fine, but nothing crazy. But really, the thing that drags it down is just doing those stupid fucking laser the
light show
beam
things.
grab,
Yeah,
getting the
it's
beams
so
every time
dumb.
is just like, because at this point, like you said, it's like either somebody is zooming through it and gets them all instantly, and you don't have to worry about it, or no one is doing it, and you're literally trekking back from the place you're supposed to go because the other two people have been standing there the whole time,
Yep,
not
just
going to
staring
go
at the
back
door.
either, and it's just like, all right, you motherfuckers, I'll go do this. God damn it. And like
Yeah.
that alone like makes it like annoying, even though like it's not necessarily, it is a little bit of the strike's fault, but it's more just people being lazy shitbags fault more than anything. But that's just what it is. So I'm guessing you want to put this down here, right?
Yeah, that's F tier
Yeah,
for
I'm
sure.
fine with that. We can put it there.
Those are the two strikes that I really don't. Is the Disgraced and X's Crash
Yeah.
to close the loop on that comment earlier. Yeah, those are the two. What do you got, Mike? What are you looking
What
at?
do I got next? I'm gonna say we'll just keep with the knocking out these Nessus strikes.
Nessus? Sure.
I'll go with Proving Grounds next.
Sure. A good strike on Nessus.
Yeah. I was gonna say I overall I do like this strike. I think I would say it's in that vein for me personally of like I like it. It's fun, but it's no. I don't think there are some parts that I find annoying, but they're
Yeah.
not necessarily parts that like make me go like, oh man, let's go.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of hit that middle of the pack stride for me. In terms of like when you're just playing through it normally, there are like I like the opening sequence where you're kind of running up to that whole little new area they've made, which also is like just like a battlegrounds. So like so that's kind of hurts it in some respects because they've like doubled up on that. So like you're either doing proving grounds and doing that right away, or you're doing like battlegrounds and just doing that all over again. So that is what it is. But I still do like that little area where you run up and it's like the Cabal encampment that's like in front of that big tank.
Yep.
I think it's just an overall like it's a cool premise, like a strike. I like that it was this. I think sometimes a lot of these strikes are like very much a like this was a part of the main campaign of some expansion or whatever. I like that this one was just like it dropped in the middle of a season. It's a part of the seasonal storyline. It feels very much like it is a moment in time for Destiny in a cool way that like not a lot of other strikes feel that way.
Yep.
So that's why I like that aspect of it. I think the only part I really I think the tank room is okay on normal difficulty, but can suck ass on higher tier difficulties. But I will say that is something that has gotten better with the inclusion of like the higher like the 3.0 subclasses. I think it's definitely gotten more manageable in that regard, for sure. And then like the boss room, I think on normal difficulty is like fun because like people have like we like to this point like is like other strikes where people have just figured it out and just you can as long as you can just melt the people have a decent weapon to just blow down those little shields, you can melt that boss pretty fast now.
What decent weapon would that be, Mike? Go ahead and tell the people what the truth is.
Skyburner's Oath, baby. No,
the meta, baby.
That's right. No, I there was a fun time where I did not realize Skyburner's Oath could shoot through the barriers of those
the bubble shields.
The bubble shields on that.
Super clutch.
And then I've brought that into one of our more recent ones, and it definitely came through in a surprising way, which was really fun. But but even without that, like there are plenty of weapons like on the lower tier difficulties, like if you just ring as a normal strike, you just jump in there, melt that bubble, and then the boss is damageable, and you can just nuke them. But on higher difficulties, that can be a little annoying. But that's mainly because of like the fireball stuff, because they become like 20 times more a threat. So it becomes like more of like a battle of patience, which is not always like the most fun to me. Because it makes it just feel like you're kind of dragging out the fight rather than having a fight, so to speak. But overall, I still enjoy this strike. It's one of those ones that like it comes up and I'm not just like, oh god, here we go. It's like, okay, yeah, let's run through Proving Grounds, and that's still that's like enough for me. So I think I'm feeling B tier for this one. But what are you feeling? What are you feeling?
B tier is good. I wish, like, I will say this. as far as like a grandmaster to do that feels like a grandmaster, Proving Grounds is definitely a good one. Like I felt very satisfied and
Right.
achieved after I beat Proving Grounds,
For sure.
both pre 3.0 and post 3.0. I think it's still a good challenge. I do think the boss room is a little much.
Yeah.
It's like anytime there's like a mechanic that you have to wait until it stops happening,
Yes.
which
Exactly.
there are a lot of in Destiny.
Yep.
And in this case, it's the fireballs that the boss shoots out. Like eventually, they'll just stop shooting fireballs, and it's like, thank fucking god.
Oh, it's done. Okay. Now we can actually play the game. Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
now we can fight the boss. And like the first mini boss that you fight, like right at the top of the hill when you're coming into the tank, where it has like this super auto aim, like melt you with its machine gun, heir apparent insta kill bullshit. Like that is also not great, and it happens a lot. And then you just burn through all your revives. So on the GM spectrum, it's like a little weird. Definitely a fun strike to run though, just in general. Not too long, goes by pretty quickly. It threads that needle of not being too much, and is a cool like cabal location. Doesn't feel like Nessus, which is a plus, 100%.
Yes.
Because you're in the tank for the most part. But yeah, B tier is good. It's a good strike. One of the better ones. It's solid, and it's a very satisfying GM to finish, even if it's brutal.
Yeah, for sure. What strike you got next?
Let's talk about Corrupted.
Let's talk about it.
The Corrupted. The C in this tier list stands for the Corrupted. Corrupted is another one of those ones where, similar to Lightblade, I like it a lot, but it has too much going on. Anytime, like, this is the one strike that will almost always push you up against the timer.
Yeah.
And that isn't good. It doesn't feel good. It's just a little too long. I think you could take out one of the encounters, whether that be like the second part of the boss fight or the one of the two parts of the elevator sequence. I don't know why there needs to be two.
Yeah. Yep.
Or even like the whole ogre fight in the middle. Like it's like, you know, one of the few like full three, like Glassway is like a full 3 encounter strike, right? Where you fight the fallen bosses, then the lake, and then the boss fight at the end, right? Like Corrupted is like that, the elevator, and then the ogre part, and then the boss at the end. But there's so much in between those sections.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just stuffed to the breaking point, and it feels like it's breaking. Like when we were doing the GMs that first time that I didn't beat it, and then later in later seasons I ended up finally beating the Corrupted, and boy did it feel good just to be over and done with it.
Yep.
It like we would just get to the end, and then we would be at 45 minutes on a GM. Like, it is so demoralizing to get to the end and then run out of lives because you ran out of time, and then it's like, all right, let's just do our best, and then we all get booped to oblivion.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I was gonna say, like, or stuff that like does not feel like it's anywhere near your control, where it's just like, oh, I'm behind this pillar, and somehow this boss's stupid AOE boop still hits me, and are just it seems like she's focused on somebody else, but still just like randomly boop somebody else, and it's like there's so many things in that boss, that's particularly the second part of that boss fight, that feels so out of your control in a way that just makes it very, very frustrating. Even on like in a normal difficulty, when you're just normally running it, it just feels like it can waste your time more than anything. And just, man, again, this is more like the light beam thing, but like the fact that this strike has existed for so long, and like people just don't throw the ball to each other for certain things. It's just like I get like sometimes when you're on the base level strike and it's like, whatever, this stuff is like mindless anyway. Just throw it and it'll pop the shield. You can just do it. It's fine. But like particularly it's like with the boss, like just throw me the damn ball and I'll throw it at the boss, instead of you trying instead of you just trying to like huck it all the way across the entire map and then missing 3 times. And all in that time you were trying to do this, you could have just thrown it to me who's like either standing right next to you and we would have jumped across, or I'm like jumping in front, jumping right across from you like a foot away on this other platform. Just throw it to me, and I will,
Just throw it to me.
and we
I'm
can
looking
damage
at
this
you.
boss. It'll be fine. Like
Yeah.
that annoys me so much. But yeah, I think you're right. It's just like I think this is another one where like I don't hate it, but it's just been in the game for so long now. Every time you come up, it's just like, all right, fine, here we go. Because it's just longer than them, because you have to do more counters. You have to, deal with the dumb ball stuff, deal potentially with like the dumb bull crap that can happen in the boss room. There's just like all these little things that just add up in this strike because it is such a longer one that just exhausts you over time. And I think this is just. Yeah. I wouldn't have minded if this one went away with Forsaken. That's what I'll say.
It's a bummer, right? Because it's the only Dreaming City strike, and there's so many cool parts about the Dreaming City. And this does feature a lot of the cool parts about the Dreaming City, and like aesthetically, it's super cool looking.
Yep, 100%.
And like the whatever they're called, the Awoken Witches are super cool, and the story with them is super cool. Saving one in a strike that ties in the Last Wish, very cool. Yep. It's just too long. It's too much. I would love if they made a new strike in the Dreaming City that was a little better than this.
Yep, that takes like in the Dreaming City. It
like,
takes some more
into, like,
current Destiny things in mind.
Whatever.
Yes, 100%. That would
like there's so
really
much
nice.
room there. It's not off the possibility, right? Like there's still a curse in the Dreaming City, and they might tie that into the story at some point. We might get a new strike there, God willing.
Yeah, or make like some battlegrounds or something that like actually take you back there or something.
Yeah,
just
whatever,
just something. Yeah, would be nice. I agree.
But it is not terrible. It's no Exodus Crash, but it's just not good.
Yeah,
it's not great.
C tier. C for corrupted.
Corrupted
is right. Also, so I'm looking at the time. Maybe we can speed up a little bit for these last few.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry.
That's
we're
okay.
having fun here.
No, it is a good time, but it's also like I don't know if people want to sit here and listen to us ramble about strikes for an hour or plus.
Hey, if they play all these strikes, they probably do.
Yeah, fair.
With us.
Yeah, you could be running strikes right now in Destiny 2, listening to us ramble about strikes in Destiny 2. Let's see.
Yours, Mike?
Next one up I'm going to do is the Arms Dealer. Mm-hmm. I think this is another one in the same vein of early Destiny 2 strikes that are now just like outclassed by all of the new abilities we have in a way that makes it still fun, but I definitely hope they kind of update some of the amount of enemies you see in some parts of it. Like specifically, I'm thinking of like that tank room that you go once you you fight through the first area and you're fighting across through the Cabal little base.
Yeah,
I think that part's still pretty fun, and like carrying the bombs and stuff. I think that part's all fine, but then when you leave that and get to the ship, I feel like all the amount of enemies that are in I feel like there's more enemies in the lead up to getting inside that ship than there isn't actually inside the ship, and I feel like it should be the other way around. And I hope that's maybe I think they have stated somewhat recently. I can't remember exactly where. It might have been in a TWAB or something. That they do want to revisit some of this older content and kind of refresh it a little bit. And I take that as them just adding a bunch more enemies into these areas. That makes sense. And I think this is a prime candidate for that stuff of just have a lot more enemies. The boss fight itself, I think, is cool, against what is it, Brakazan, and getting in the elevator and going up to it, and then being in that cool boss arena. I think it's a cool fight, but again on night, it's one of those things where on base strike level you're gonna melt that dude as soon as you get to the top, just pretty much the same as Shadows. As soon as you get in that room, you're just gonna melt them. People probably barely even know that there's a whole mechanic where he goes up into these towers. You have to get the bombs like you did in the start of the strike, which that's what teaches you that mechanic. Then you have to take those and dunk them on plates, and when you do that, more enemies come into the arena and stuff. And that actually is I remember doing it back in year one Destiny 2, and I thought that was a fun like encounter, but like now it doesn't matter at all. You just mount
The
that
thing
dude
is,
as soon as
like,
you get up, and it's like it's fine, it's done.
also on GM difficulty, you don't want it to get there because
Yes,
then it becomes like absolutely miserable.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's like it's like it's on those two ends of like it
Yeah.
feels miserable when you're doing it in that fight. So like that's something that's a strike that I think could be, if they refreshed it, it could still be a really cool strike, because I think it is still like a really cool place to go around. Like I would say, like out of all the Cabal strikes that are still in the game, I'd still actually consider this my favorite one, even though I think it still could be better.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm gonna put this in B tier.
Yeah, I was thinking B tier as well. Yeah, I think it's a cool strike. It's like my least favorite of the three grind 'em out strikes. It's probably my least favorite.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's inoffensive. I like the hangar where you're going through and all the turrets are spawning and stuff.
Yeah.
I just wish that it was kind of like laid out a little bit better. Like maybe all the enemies were spawning before you came into the room or something.
Yeah. For
Just
sure.
that way it feels more like you're fighting through it. But yeah. The other grindy strike that I really do like is Inverted Spire.
Yes.
The
I like
last-
this. I like this strike quite a bit as well.
Yeah, this is like a good A tier for me. It's a great grind. When this was up for like double rewards last season, I played it a whole bunch. This was the first GM I ever did with you and our friend Jake.
Yep. Hell yeah.
And it was a great time. I was like really, really, really scared going into it. And you're like,
Yeah.
it is a little crazy. There's this one Drake right at the beginning that might nuke you. Just be careful of him. But aside
Yep.
from that, you know,
And then
you'll be
and
all
then,
right.
and you get to the end, and you're just like, oh, we can just instantly nuke this boss, just like all the other Destiny strikes. Great.
Yeah, and that's great. I think it's good. I think it's also like a cool boss arena, similar to like Glassway. You get to the end, and it's like, oh, it's a big Vex thing.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you go into like deeper layers of the Vex arena. Very cool Vex arena that you really never use or see much of, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's only that strike, really. Yeah.
And the drill is cool. Whatever, man. Drill haters can be haters.
The drill
is
the drill sequence is fun. I think even on like the base level, but I think it like in some ways is always fun, because it's usually always the point where just like shit hits the fan on
Yeah.
GM Nightfalls, because he's always that thing where you get to it, and it's like, all right, somebody has to go down there, well, and have fun, whoever that is. And then, but then usually all it takes is some person accidentally like slip off the ledge or whatever, and then they're just stuck down there too, and then it's just chaos, and then you have to find the hidey holes.
But like
Yeah.
when you're actually at the drill and you're fighting across the layers as like a group and shooting stuff, it's actually like really fun. Like like avoiding the scion boobs and like staying on the level ground. Like I think it's cool. And the whole like battlefield that you sparrow across before that is also really cool.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a really cool.
Easy, but you know,
Yeah, I think that's a really cool zone. I that is another one that I really wish they would, that like, you know, again, talking about it for arms dealer, like I wish they made more use of that zone, because it is one of those things where you just zoom across it, and there are enemies in that zone you can go, like there's like Vex and stuff and like ships flying around, so you like could fight in that area if you wanted to, but more times than not people just zoom across the whole field, and then just, you know, to the point where the actual Cabal that are at that main zone just spawn, and then you get in. So I kind of like, I don't know, I feel like they would make people mad if they like gated that sequence and you had to actually fight in that battlefield or something, but like I personally kind of would be more down for that. Like maybe have that, instead of having that fight in at the one spot where the lifts are, have the battle like more in the actual battlefield itself.
Totally.
I think could be interesting way to like change up that strike. I also like that randomly, like this also can happen in Arms Dealer too, that like people might not even see this, sometimes just randomly a tank can spawn, and you can just get into like one of those little like tanks that you like rarely see in current Destiny, because they were only really a thing in the original Destiny 2 campaign that came out originally.
Yep. Shout out to Vox Obscura. Bring it back.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it is in there. But I think that's just also like a fun weird thing where it's just like, all right, here's just like a tank all of a sudden. And usually every time everyone's just like, oh, a tank, and somebody gets in it. Excuse me, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Anytime someone tells me that Inverted Spire is the GM double rewards you want to grind, I am always down to grind.
Yes, that is for sure. All right, we're down to our last two,
Yeah.
Which one do you want?
I will take the Devil's Lair if you want to talk about Scarlet Keep.
That is fine with me.
Devil's Lair. Really think this is another one where it's like Fallen Saber, where I like this strike a lot. I like the updates that they did to it. To make it a more Destiny 2 thing. It's like a B tier. It's middle of the pack, right?
Yeah.
But this is another, like, this is the strike. This is the strike. Literally, it was in the beta of Destiny 1.
Yeah.
It is the OG strike. They brought the music back from, like, the remix version of the strike that they put out, as well as, like, occasionally it'll play the super hard rockin' guitar that came out for Rise of Iron. Yeah, I really like Devil's Lair. I think it is just like a quintessential strike experience. And it's true of the GM as well. This is another one that's like a pretty good first GM.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little on the harder side versus like Inverted Spire or Lake of Shadows. But not that much. And it's just it's a good, solid strike, right? You got the defend ghost while 3 waves of enemies come, and you get a little hive mix in there now too, which is fun. You've got the big battlefield kind of thing, like Insight Terminus, where you're going across, and now there's Brigs in the mix there that are really cool. And the back in D1, that spider tank would absolutely one-shot you from across the map, and that happens much less now, which I'm so grateful for. And it's got a fun boss with good music, and a room that you can hide in if you want to play that way. That's totally cool too. So yeah, I think this is a solid B right in the middle, up there with like Fallen Saber as like a fun strike for me to grind if I'm looking to grind.
I'm kind of with you. I think B's a good spot for it. I think the redeeming thing is really the boss room for me, because I'd say like a lot of the rest of the strike is just kind of fine. Sure. I think like the holding out the waves thing is kind of is like all right. But I will say that's made way more fun when it's like a GM. When you have to kind of like huddle in that corner and you're kind of funneling the enemies to you. I thought that was always fun. And I think it's been made more interesting with the 3.0s even. And I think just the boss room, I think in itself is just a lot of fun. It's a fun boss fight. It's a fun. I like the amount of enemies that are constantly coming at you. Makes it like feel like you're always like constantly fighting, and I think it's just I can definitely respect it as the thing that is like you said, it was the strike that started it all, so to speak, for Destiny. Yep. And it has stood the test of time. So like that's pretty impressive.
Before we throw Scarlet Keep in there, I want you to notice that we have created a pyramid.
We have the darkness
so we
is
are
here.
The darkness.
The darkness is here.
The darkness is here.
Darkness is
February
here.
28th, 2023.
2023. Strand soon. Strand with us. Our final strike here, and I will say to make the very apt analogy, this is very much feels to me like picking the worst kid last, so to speak. Maybe
the kid left at volleyball, not the worst, but
exactly. Yeah, the kid's like, I guess you're on my team, whatever. That is the strike. That is Scarlet Keep. This is one that like I for the most part I actually do enjoy. It really is just the fucking elevator sequence that like grinds this strike fun in movement to a halt.
Yep.
Like if that did not existed or was like sped up, this would be higher on the list for me. But just the amount of time just like sitting in that elevator, just slowly going up, and then you got to go into these tiny rooms and kill a couple enemies, and you shoot a crystal, and then you start it all over again, and it's just too long. It is one of those things where maybe like the first couple times you did it, you were like, okay, that was neat. Like it is very much in the same vein of Lightblade and doing that stupid boat sequence now for me.
Yeah.
But now this strike has been in the game for literally twice as long, if not longer, than Lightblade has. So like it is worn out its welcome for me even more.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw it in C.
Yeah, that's fair. Damn. That's it. That's our rank.
That
This is
is,
a surprising list, I feel like.
yeah. I was gonna say I definitely did not expect some of the ones that are higher up to be as high as they are. But now that I'm thinking, but now that I'm seeing them all here together, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, it
no,
makes sense.
this is right.
Yeah.
This feels right to me. And,
Exodus crashed into the disgrace all the way at the
all the
bottom.
way at the bottom, and it's corrupted, and all of these other ones very low.
Yeah.
But some of these other ones are still really great. But yeah, I think I think that's a good way to like put where strikes are in general. That like I think they are a very core part of Destiny. That everyone plays it. Everyone's been playing them for years. They still play them. We still play them. We're doing Nightfalls, which I think has like helped to a little bit to breathe a little bit of life into some of this content for us, at least. I feel like that's safe to say because we did not really start doing that stuff. I mean, granted, I started
You started like the season before me, basically.
yeah, we did Season of the Chosen was kind of the first real GM experience I started doing them in, and I've been doing them pretty much every season ever since. I still enjoy doing GMs. I think I agree with the sentiment that maybe I'm caring less and less about the power grind to get to said GMs.
Yeah.
But I understand that they want to have a build and build up to these things, and I think they want to have this prestige thing every season, right, for people to jump in and play to, and without that power grind, so to speak, I wonder how I feel like they could potentially lose a lot of the prestige feeling, so to speak, of these. So it's a difficult thing to say. Is like as much as I would like to see them just be able to go like, oh yeah, the power level, don't worry about that anymore for GMs. You can just jump into them when we put them out. Like I'd be like, I at the end of the day, I'd be like, cool, awesome. I was still grind these, but at the same time, I think like I could also see like a lot of people feeling like that kind of just lose the allure of these feeling like they're this higher tier thing because now they're just slightly harder things that they are. Like I don't know. I don't know if I'm saying that aptly enough, but I feel like I feel like I can see it both ways. Where like, all right, it's hard to see the fully the right answer. I guess is how more I'm feeling of like.
Yeah, GMs are setting your level, 25, 20 below hand anyway.
Right.
So it's like, why make me get to a level anyway if it's just going to be a hard set of whatever, kind of like contest mode, which I definitely understand. And I feel like they don't need it, right? Like GMs are hard enough. Like you jump into one of those by accident, you messed up.
Yes.
And you jump into one without like the right weapons, without Arbalest or Wishender or Le Monarch or these things that people who have
very
been
important champion
have.
weapons.
Yeah, then it's going to be a lot harder for sure. And to the same degree, right? Like adept weapons are in such a weird spot just in general. But I have like what has drawn me to strikes and Nightfalls and GMs has been adept weapons. Like some of my favorite guns are some of the adept weapons. Like Horror's Least is definitely one of my favorite guns in the game.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can only get from GMs. So, but like we're in that weird spot where like Trials kind of had some of its most famous weapons cycled out, and then Iron Banner did, and now GMs kind of have, where it's like, do I want a Malicious Birthright? No, not really.
Yeah.
Am I ever going to use it? Probably not. Like, do I want a Mindbender's Ambition? Not really. Like a solar shotgun, like I guess like is fine, but
it's I think it's also a case of just where current Destiny grind is, where it's like we are players who have played a lot and have a vault full of weapons and things that like are already so good, right? Like to a certain extent, what matters if I have another shotgun when I barely use shotguns other than to complete a bounty in this game every so often. So like it is hard to like feel like there are like some of these to feel like every weapon is always worth it all the time. And that even goes for like things not related to Nightfalls and stuff, right? So like
Yeah.
I think they do need to figure out something, other things to more, or maybe there are some things, but more things that make feeling like it's worth it to have to grind those extra levels for getting into Nightfall, GM Nightfalls, if they're going to keep that. Because then because at a certain point it's going to become like that only becomes more and more prevalent every season, where I like have this huge arsenal of weapons, and the adept weapons are becoming less and less, viable. And I know, like, they said in a recent TWAB, they've talked about, they're probably going to more potentially do things like adding enhanced perks to adept weapons for raids. But are they going to do that for Nightfall GM weapons too? Maybe, maybe not. We don't really know. I think
Yeah.
that could potentially be a nice thing to do for all of those guns too. But I also could
Yeah.
see that still making people upset, because then they go like, well, that still didn't really solve the problem of making these master raids feel worthwhile doing. And that to me, I was like, I don't know, like, yeah, I feel like some of the point of this stuff is just to have more challenging content, to challenge yourself in this game. And I think that's still worth it to some people. Because I definitely think there is a level of like, I do enjoy when we when we're able to actually coordinate and play this game at a higher level, so to speak. I do like getting cool rewards, obviously, but I think there is also a level of like, yeah, we're running through one of these GMs and feel like a coordinated group, and that can execute these cool plans, or have these cool builds that like can work together, or like something I've spent time building this cool build and then see it, how worthwhile it was to do this when I go into an activity like GMs and I'm like just doing really well, or like slaying and taking out a bunch of enemies, and or like watching a champion get melted down instantly because of this cool build I did. I think that stuff is like pretty cool too.
Yeah, for sure. Like seeing like, my warlock build of being a healer and having those clutch heals but keeping your abilities up and all those things in GMs is like really satisfying.
Yeah.
For sure. And it can definitely make the difference too. And there's not a lot of content that challenges you to that extent, kind
Yeah.
of like what you're saying. But I do think, like recently, like we've brought up Lightblade and Arcburn and all this stuff. Like some of those changes to GMs have been a little rough or feel arbitrary in the moment, and
Yes.
it's tough. It's tough to like. I get it, because like we're so powerful now. Like, how do you make something challenging? And I'm curious, like, because it's only going to get that as a problem, quote unquote problem, is only going to get worse, right?
Yeah.
Especially if we get a new subclass with its own broken abilities, right?
Yep.
And I like that stuff. I loved Stasis when it came out. I'm not one of those people that was crying in PvP or whatever. And I still like Stasis, and I'm really excited to see what they do next. Some of like the strand stuff we've seen is like suspending enemies by threads, and they're like completely helpless. Like,
Yep.
I'm sure that is going to be extremely overpowered in Grandmasters and stuff like that.
Yes, for sure.
And I'm excited about that, and I think that just is going to challenge them to up the ante in the other direction. Like you said, there's at least one interview. I think it was an interview with Polygon, where they talked about revisiting classic Destiny content and updating it to be more modern and challenging for Destiny 2 as it is now, which is effectively Destiny 3, right? Like the subclasses all being changed to me is put this in the Destiny 3 territory, especially with a fifth subclass coming in just a few short months, right?
Yeah.
So with potentially a sixth one in the expansion after that. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer to the problem is. I do know that we are at that, like, we're just at that kind of fatigue point between expansions, and I think that's totally normal, and we
for
will
sure.
get past it. But I am curious what Bungie's answer to some of these questions is going to end up being.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think like that kind of fatigue, and also like like you said, the challenge factor. Like I'm curious, a big factor of Nightfalls that we talked about a little bit, but not much, is like champion enemies. and like they're a very
Yeah.
big factor, and like the whole kind of thing around these higher tier difficulties, those enemies, and defeating those enemies to get lives so you can kind of survive and stuff. I do like that they've made more weapons and more viable tactics to stun and take care of champions. I think that's a great
Yes.
move for the game at the end, especially if like champions are just going to continue to be a thing.
Yep.
But I really do hope that like a lot of these past couple expansions that have introduced enemies with more interesting and different styles to fight against start becoming the norm in more content. Like I
Yeah.
think like it's kind of again, like I mentioned briefly in the movie ranking this, like I think it is still kind of a bummer that like the Glassway is the only strike in this game where you have like Fallen with ice powers, and the same with Lightblade. Like Lightblade is the only strike in the game with Hive that have the Guardian superpowers, and you only fight the ones with you only fight the one Guardian type with the shields, like the Void Hive Guardian. Like you don't even fight either of the other ones in that. So
I
like
mean, Glassway is the only strike in this game with wyverns. You know,
yes, for sure.
fucking Devil Slayer is the only strike in the game with Briggs.
Yeah,
Even
like
even Glassway doesn't have Briggs in it, and it's like so there are these aspects to the game that are new and fresher and more interesting enemies to fight that could be disseminated all throughout the game. You know?
yep, 100%. Like I can see it, like them just doing like like a simple thing like that of just like have in Insight Terminus every so often, instead of you having this sequence where you're fighting have the sequence where you're dunking the orb with and you're fighting Cabal and stuff. Maybe every so often just have like freaking wyverns show up, or
Yep.
have or in the boss fight itself have like these different kinds of enemies show up. You know, Exodus Crash you can have in that opening sequence when you're instead of getting the stupid blue things, like have these big brigs you have to fight instead of getting these
Yeah.
stupid blue lasers or whatever the hell. Like adding
Yeah.
like putting these enemies into some of these fights could make them way more interesting and refresh them in a way that I think could be fun, and in all levels of the content, even at the base level and into that next. So, like I'm hoping those are the kind of things they're thinking about when they say like they want to make these feel like the current Destiny 2 game and the current like difficulty level is like put more of these enemies they've already started introduced throughout other content into the end to refresh these older things, and maybe potentially introduce new enemy types that make sense to show up again in these other things. Like there's the potential for that too. So I kind of that's kind of where I'm hoping to see that stuff, because that also feels like something a little bit more tangible than like there's no way they're gonna completely redo every single thing in a strike, right? It's not like
Yeah.
we're gonna suddenly load up Lake of Shadows and it's completely different objectives, completely different enemy waves of enemies and types and stuff like that. Like I think like the best case for them to freshen this stuff up, right, is just take stuff that has been introduced in the game since Beyond Light, with new enemy types and new abilities and things they can do, and bring some of those enemies into older stuff that they weren't in previously. Like I think
Yeah.
doing that baseline would do a lot for me, at least.
And it's no coincidence that Birthplace of the Vile, the Proving Grounds, and God, what was one of the other new ones? And Glassway are in our top 2 tiers for strikes. Like 3 out of the 4 most recent strikes added to the game, and they're all great.
Yeah.
Lightblade obviously has great ideas in it. It's just some things about it are a little rough.
Yep.
Still was a great strike to see for the first time in Witch Queen. So I
Mm-hmm.
think like they've certainly gotten way better at making new strikes. And boy, am I excited to see what strikes look like in Neomuna as like an urban environment.
Yeah,
And
like a big city to walk
potentially
around.
potentially very vertical strikes. Like imagine the tower sequence in Scarlet Keep, but you get to climb it at whatever pace you like.
Yep.
Something like that. Even that just has me so excited. And we're getting like new takes on the Cabal, and obviously like a new champion style enemy. So I think, hopefully those factors can also trickle down to older strikes and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And then yeah, like other things like we mentioned before, like bring strike scoring back as like a permanent thing would be super fun. I know
Yes.
that was a big thing in Destiny 1. But I think when they
Yeah.
brought it back during that, they brought it back during was not Solstice, it was Guardian Games, I think, right?
Guardian
Like that
games.
was
Yeah.
just like a fun, simple thing. Just be like, yeah, okay, yeah, now getting kills and getting the score matters again. Like I think tying rewards to it in some way would be really nice. Maybe some people wouldn't like that because that means they may not be able to do their weird speed running things, like you said, like putting on a sword and
Yeah.
eager edging through like as shadows as possible. Make that less worthwhile because you can get better rewards. Yeah, and I think just like finding ways to make that stuff, to refresh some of the stuff is very much needed now. I feel like for me,
Mm-hmm.
um, and and and,
Great.
and that's I think that's gonna do it. For
The
our
state of
for our strike
strikes.
ranking, yeah, state of strikes in Destiny 2. Here's our ranking. Feel free to,
More good than bad.
yeah, that's what I'd say too. More good than bad. I don't,
And
yeah,
battlegrounds are fine.
and yeah, battlegrounds are fine. We don't really have to talk about those too much because I personally think there's like a strong feeling to me that like I don't know if those will survive the jump to Lightfall, and
Yeah.
I could see those being taken out and replaced with some of the
Psyops battlegrounds,
some of
maybe.
the battlegrounds or even the treasure things that are from this season in the current season or something. But
Yeah.
we'll have to wait and see on that one. And yeah, I think they have said, matter of factly, that there are some things they're going to update with next season with Nightfalls, or not Nightfalls, but Strikes too. So I think we will hopefully see a lot of the things we mentioned. Fingers crossed. Next season, a little maybe some things next season, but probably more so in Lightfall in February. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it. I don't feel it yet, right? But I think come this time next month when we're like weeks away from a new season, then I'll be like, oh shit, that's right. We're in it now. Like yeah, we're in the road to a new
Yeah.
Destiny expansion pretty soon here.
Yeah, we're closer than you would think right now. We're
Yeah,
4 months away to the day. So
yeah,
it's really not that far.
yeah. But thanks everybody, yeah, for hanging out for us for nearly an hour, almost 2 hours, hearing us
Nice.
ramble about Destiny 2 strikes and the state of them. I find it, you can see that we're still a pretty new Destiny channel, all things considered, because you can see the variance in us just trying weird content here, where we have a 2 hour ramble session about strikes, but also like a 90-second video talking about one single weapon. So we're trying stuff. Always feel free to leave a comment below and let us know what you think about the stuff. You can even just berate us for our weird strike takes if you want to do that too. That's fine.
Yeah, tell us your favorite strike. I want to know
Yes.
people's favorite strike.
Yeah, tell us
Favorite
our
and least
favorite, your
favorite.
one. Tell us what you think, if you think any of these are in
What
the
do you
wrong
go
place.
to orbit on as soon as you see it loads?
Yeah, everyone's gonna say the corrupted, and I get it.
Probably.
But yeah, thanks everybody. If you wanna, all our socials and other things are down below. If you want to follow us and follow us for our Destiny chats and things, future stuff on Helm the Tower. Look forward to. I'll do some more quick weapon reviews. Maybe we'll try and do some more stuff like this. I don't know. Who knows? We'll
Yeah,
figure it
maybe
out.
I can get Jake and we can rank we can do a tier maker on the Crucible maps.
Just have him complain about PvP things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. We could probably do if you did enjoy this. Maybe we could do like a raid ranking or something. I don't know. We'll see. We also maybe just not say for sure, but we might also be doing like a raid-a-thon soon for charity
yes.
purposes. But we won't confirm or deny it at the moment. We'll just say maybe. It's a maybe.
Potentially. Yeah.
So we'll leave that up in the air. But yeah, thanks again, as always, everybody, for hanging out here for this video. And we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.